Heyo. We'll see. I say you're there.
And
He
we did
is.
it.
Yeah, we made it to
Hello, we
Friday.
made it. It's finally Friday.
That's
Yeah.
why it doesn't feel like a finally Friday to me. It feels like it's holy shit. It's Friday. Like it feels like a
I'm
Tuesday.
I'm not gonna lie to you. This week, every day felt like a Friday from
Mm.
sunny Croatia. But
Yeah, it
that's
must
just
be
me.
hard. Yeah, right. That's why this is must be nice. She says 1 week post vacation and
Right,
counting
right,
down
yeah,
for the next one. Like when is it? We're already talking about next year. Like when we go away. Oh, I'm so looking forward to it. Yeah, it's a year from now. So,
yeah, right.
but yeah, happy Friday.
Happy Friday.
I think let's just kind of market wise here as we head into the day, which most everyone already knows that, but I guess what the hell? Not a ton to talk about. So I'm going to kind of stretch it. Like it's that weird sort of thing again, right? Where there's a ton, potentially happening, but not a ton. Like it just, I don't know. I don't know how to
Exactly
bullet
that.
point it. Does it make sense?
Exactly
Okay.
that.
I'm glad.
No, exactly. But before we crack
Oh
on, let me
yeah,
just quickly
legals.
get the legals out.
Ooh, bad.
So nothing. Obviously, welcome to the Grey Market Blast, the final one of the week. Woo!
Yes.
As usual, nothing discussed on the space session constitute trading or investment advice. Don't sue us if we say something and you decide to trade on the back of it, and then you lose money.
Right.
But if you do trade on the back of anything we say and you make a shit ton, we'll quite happily take some, some beers or whatever it is you want to send us. Yeah,
Just
yeah.
a
I've got to
shout
play
out
the
on the
upside.
Twitter. Whatever. It works.
Yeah, exactly. But I tell you, but further to your point there, what you were making, it does. We've mentioned this before. It's one of those where any normal time, going back the year, 2 years before, whatever, you'd think there's too much to talk about.
Yes.
But the bar is now set so high for massive
Yes.
news. We're like, well, okay, what
Development
do we talk
wise,
about now?
there isn't much. So yeah, happy Friday. Obviously, I think the majority of the focus today, more than anything, is going to be on the meeting, between President
Yeah.
Trump and Russia's President Putin. My, favorite thing right now is how many people have probably Googled what time is it in Alaska to figure out what the hell time 11 local time is. It's 3 p.m. Eastern for those of you who are wondering. And so 3 o'clock this afternoon, of course, after the market closes will be when the meeting happens. Trump said yesterday there will be a press conference that follows, though he's not sure it'll be a joint press conference. That really depends on how it goes. Sounded like, right, there's, right, I know, like, you've been very helpful, .gif. There's three outcomes, right, or there's, three potential outcomes, and again, this is sort of like, gee whiz, thanks for the insight, Ange. But obviously the best would be ceasefire, and I'm going to put the chances of that very, very low. I'm not going to put a percentage on it because I don't even know if I never took a statistics class, so I have no freaking clue. I just like to pretend that I did. Worst case scenario is it gets worse and all of a sudden Ukraine's lobbing missiles at Moscow over the weekend. Most likely outcome is nothing. Like, we're going to have another
Well,
meeting. Putin and Zelensky will
do you
meet.
know what? Obviously,
Yeah,
we can
go
see
ahead.
our dear friend Michael Brown is listening in. Hello, Mr. Brown. And he's nailed it this morning on the morning blast, where he said this has got all increasingly getting the vibes of this is a meeting about a meeting.
Yes, yeah. It could have been an
And he nailed
email.
it.
Yeah.
Yeah,
This meeting
right.
could have been email. I flew to Alaska, but I mean, Alaska's nice this time of year. So like, I would totally accept a business meeting
Yeah,
there,
it gets you out the house.
Yeah, you can fly private to get there. Like, I wouldn't complain. So, I mean, and I'm not trying to downplay it. It is obviously important to get the two of them, communicating
Yeah,
because we haven't, talking, communication is the way to either escalate or resolve any sort of conflict, right? Just not doing anything is not great. As a child of the 80s, I learned that. And so yeah, we'll just be watching. Will it impact grains? It could. Who the hell knows? If shit goes really sideways and all of a sudden we're secondary sanctioning and China's gets big mad and like there's a huge blow up, like no pun intended on that side. Sure. But again, that's kind of in that little worst case outcome, like percentage wise, probably low, that happens. Obviously if the war is resolved, then we kind of feel better about the movement of grain out of the region. But to be completely honest, part of the reason that the market doesn't react to any of these headlines anymore is because the movement of the grain out of the region hasn't been overall, really interrupted since fall
yeah,
of 2022. Now, you've had different farmers with production. You have other issues, that could show up. But yeah, I think more in the market out of the Black Sea that was weather driven, production driven, and some of these other things. But obviously we'll be paying attention to, how this all pans out and whether or not the biggest thing to me is if the situation escalates, like if this goes
Yes.
very, very badly, and all of a sudden you've got, the U.S. supplying Ukraine with long range missiles and because remember we had that conversation. Can you hit St. Petersburg? Can you hit Moscow or
Yeah, yeah,
whatever?
yeah, yeah.
He's like, I just was wondering. But
Well, and also this, Trump being Trump,
yeah.
and this is no political opinion of Trump. Yeah, I'm staying well out of that.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
I'm a million miles away, both literally and figuratively. Um, you know, it's not, it's not out of the realms of possibility that he's looking for some amazing posts he can put on Truth Social after he's walked away from this meeting to
Yes.
say he's made massive achievements.
Yeah.
If he can't do that, there's every chance he.
Nope.
Putin.
Yeah.
The guy wants nothing to be done with ceasefire. Do you know what? I've had enough of it. We're going to fully support Ukraine, and he could go completely the other way
Yes.
because we do know, he has that bipolar
Yes.
tendency.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
But it's very, it's very rarely that Trump is kind of just middle of the road.
Yes.
It's one extreme or the
Yeah.
other.
And right now I think he's middle of the road to see which extreme has to go. But like
Yeah,
the
right.
ceasefire
It's the
idea,
pause.
like we know that the ceasefire today is very unlikely to happen without Ukraine
Yeah.
sitting at the table, like plain and simple. Though we could leave the meeting and it could be like we have the steps towards a ceasefire, yada, yada, yada. And so we'll see.
Yeah.
I mean, that's the main focus, I feel like, really of the world, to a certain extent.
Yeah.
He did say high stakes in all caps. So that's a big deal. And few other things. So we'll see what that looks like and how that all plays out. And it'll have an influence. I mean, I'm glad that it's this afternoon at 3 because by Sunday night at 7 or 8 or whatever, the bulk of the impact, if it is bad, good, whatever, by after a couple days, we kind of meh, and so maybe get a knee jerk reaction post Sunday night open, but we'll see. We'll see what happens, what that looks like. Next bullet point for me is weather and production thoughts. We are seeing, and I'm in the Eastern Corn Belt, so I have to be really careful. We had a conversation yesterday with this little peer group of folks that, kind of get together and talk from all around the country. Western Corn Belt folks, are super, super optimistic. They're talking, there's conversation that, Nebraska is understated in the USDA numbers. You're looking at upwards of 400 million bushels of additional production just kind of in that sort of southern plains, central southern plains sort of area, which is an area that's grown accustomed to having reduced production here over the last 5 years or so. And so you're going to see some interesting developments in grain flows simply because, the conversation in the Eastern Corn Belt now is she looked good from the road, or she looked good from the satellite, I think is what, another, good analyst, a friend of mine, or I don't like to say friend of mine about people because I'm afraid they'll be like, friend, I ain't your friend, but someone I know anyway, posted that yesterday, looked good from the satellite. There's a lot of conversation out there right now, like Illinois, Indiana, Ohio, Michigan, I can say Michigan especially, just where we're, going backwards fast. I took a drive yesterday, just locally here. I hadn't done it in a couple weeks, but it's one that I had made pretty consistently prior to us going on vacation. And I'm a homebody. Once I get home from vacation, I don't leave. But I took holy crap. Like, I don't know what has happened. But it looks gross. Like, I don't know if it's diseases set in. I don't know if the corn's just kind of given up. I know some of this was earlier planted, and tasseled early enough that it could just be senescing where it's working its way into maturity. But there's some other stuff that was a little later planted that's definitely just showing signs of disease, not looking great. And I know that's a small sample size, but when I talk to my growers, which, part of my job is to help plan what grain movement we need to make ahead of harvest. And that's predicated 100% on obviously what kind of production figures we're anticipating, as well as our overall marketing plan and things like that. And we're not even sniffing last year. We're 10, 20 bushel below last year on most expectations. It is early yet. I have to really, really caution that, you got to get the combines rolling. But at the rate we're going with how dry we're looking here over the next couple of weeks across the Corn Belt and some of this heat that we're going to see over the weekend, the next few days or so, I have a lot of farmers that in the area that are thinking they're going to be, either chopping silage or combining corn, a couple, 3 weeks earlier than normal. In some instances, silage here is going to be a couple weeks earlier than normal. And that's just a sign of how the crop's been kind of pushed along. And is not necessarily indicative of giant yields, though, again, in the Western Corn Belt, we have some folks that are like, they're understating our production level. And so we'll have some back and forth. We'll be watching that really, really closely. There's been a handful of crop tours that have already been, kind of boots on the ground or, presented some of what they're finding, especially in central Illinois. There was one that was like, okay, this isn't a year ago and the USDA is expecting production to be higher than a year ago in Illinois. This is more like 2023. And that could have a pretty big swing on the overall production nationwide, but it does look like we're really setting up for some halves and have nots. This could have some big implications on soybeans as well, and is the biggest thing that I am watching. Soybeans, everyone likes to joke, soybeans just need a shot of rain at the start of August or whatever, and they're all set. We used to run at the elevator, in my past life, we did a, 30,000 acre food grade bean program. And part of my job was to kind of assess what yields would look like and what that would mean for grain flows and all these other things. I've seen many a years where missing an August rain, missing one of the 2 or 3 August rains, that you really need can make you go backwards real quick. And so I think we've got to, kind of pump the brakes a little bit, just kind of looking at the extended forecast. It's cooler. We have below normal or normal temperatures. So that's one godsend, at least. It's not, going to get super hot here as we look out middle part of next week and beyond, but there is some concern that you have to pay attention to. And I've seen some folks, in the Western belt, and I'm not trying to pick on anyone because I have no idea where this lands in the end. But I have had a couple different analysts that I've read, from the Western Corn Belt kind of be like, there's no risk to major changes in the carry out. And that's fine. Everyone can have an opinion and maybe there isn't. But I've been here before, where everyone is just super adamant that, there's no risk here. There's no risk there. Everything is what it is. We know exactly how it looks. And that just gives me big pause. Like there was one that this morning I read, super big red flag, when I read it, because I was just like, holy cow. And maybe they're right. For their sake, I really hope they are, but we're getting really confident, in the middle of August that we know what this crop is going to be, based on NDVI, and it could very well be right, but I'm going to be watching, really the cash market, the grain flows, and all of these other things, what happens with spreads, basis, yada, yada, yada. And so we'll be seeing that. Speaking of weather, we've got some issues. Obviously, you saw Spain come in and make that flash sale yesterday or flash purchase. You saw, I just retweeted an article. All of Spain was on a heat wave alert on Friday. Like they're very much dealing with a lot of extreme heat still. And that heat staying in place. It's not the U.S. that I'm so much worried about. Like, yeah, we have the risk that the U.S. production could be lower. But I think we may, find that we're potentially overestimating the European Union production, Black Sea production out of Ukraine and some of these other things that could also help bolster or continue to support strong exports. So, beyond that, really, honestly, it's just going to be Putin and Trump. We're watching grain flows, what's going on with Brazil, and Argentina or South America in general. China continues to try to buy Brazilian soybeans. They continue to avoid the U.S. There are some interesting things happening with freight, barge freight and stuff. Like I have a good friend of mine that, trades that market structure, that freight market and the river, market in general. And he's just kind of scratching his head at the freight strength. And, so we could be open to any sort of suggestion on where that is coming from. But the strength in freight that we're seeing doesn't necessarily fit the book that we have, so to speak, or necessarily fit the narrative that we don't have any being sold. And so one of the things I want to kind of throw out there, just as a food for thought, so to speak, we lost Ryan, so he'll be back later, but Kofco does have a terminal that they'd picked up on the river. They have a terminal in St. Louis. We have learned that Kofco US, can transfer bushels or have sales on with Kofco China, and they don't have to report them until the futures are swapped or the beans are put on the boat. So I'm just definitely going to continue to really watch what is going on with basis, especially along that river. set up just to kind of see if it weakens ahead of harvest and, like it has been, if it continues to weaken as harvest gets here and some of these other things, then that's super indicative that we don't have this program. But if it stays supported and you continue to see freight rise, it's probably a sign that Costco, they're very interwoven, and I'm not trying to like come here with conspiracy theories or to work anyone up about anything, but they're very well connected. Costco US is with Growmark and the FS terminals. They know where values are. They know where supplies are trading. They know what grain flows look like in that region. And so it's very simple for them to have, the plan for purchases on the books and not have them announced. So continue to pay attention more to basis, barge freight, ocean freight. And, really when it comes down to it, yeah, we have a decent corn book on, but that hasn't really been, put up out of the Gulf. So just a few things that are kind of, yes, we aren't getting reported sales, but play with caution. Also soybeans yesterday kind of got a kick in the teeth because of that API report that they're going to go against the administration on the biofuel imports. So several moving pieces. Biggest thing still going to be Trump and Putin this afternoon. And so we'll be back on Monday. Ryan will be back with us. His Wi-Fi died. He's gone. He's going to go get a drink, and that's totally all too. So with that, we'll call it a weekend, or call it a week, or I'll get back to work actually, cause I still have a full day and so do you guys. So if you need anything, let me know. Otherwise, have a super awesome day.